What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Wednesday, November 8th edition of the NBA Lineup Generator video. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. We have a huge 14-game NBA slate today since we had no basketball yesterday. Almost every team in action, and that's going to create a lot of value, give us plenty of injury news to pay attention to, but also allow us to get to some good players in our lineups. So slates like that can be pretty fun. And we're going to use the Lineup Generator to take a look early on this afternoon at how lineups are shaking up on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Keep in mind that we will be getting news throughout the day, so these exposures will change. Some of the best plays will change, but you can use this tool for yourself. Click the link below this video, whether you're watching on Twitter or on YouTube, and use the promo code above my head, NBA Treat. You can use this tool for $4.99 for your first week. It's the best bang for your buck that you're going to get from our tools. It's perfect if you are someone that only plays a handful of lineups, someone that plays maybe lower stakes. And so buying into the full Sims package doesn't really make sense for what you play. But this tool is still utilizing our simulations. It's using our projections, our ownership projections, and it is at the end giving you lineups that we project to be profitable over time. So it's doing all the work on the back end and then giving you the final product. It's really difficult for you to mess up since there's not too much customization like there is in the Sims tool. It's perfect for you especially if you are someone playing like 20 lineups or less or playing lower stakes. $4.99 for your first week using the link below and the promo code NBA Treat. Now we're going to start on DraftKings, and normally I click all lineups here because that's my preference, is to let the tool do its job and spit out some lineups. But we're going to take a look at contrarian lineups today just to see sort of how contrarian they need to be, how contrarian these lineups are. It's always a talking point amongst the DFS community. How contrarian do you need to be? What is chalky? What is problematic? What is fine? So I think it'll be interesting to kind of look at what we consider to be profitable lineups, or what project as profitable lineups for us in our simulations. If we only choose contrarian ones, how contrarian are they actually getting? We're still going to skip over this part. When you were using it, if you wanted to just say lock LaMelo Ball, this is where you would do it. That's not something that I do or I recommend. I would much rather let the tools do the work, but we're going to skip that. And then now I'm just going to quickly select the first 20 lineups that it gives me. I'd actually selected some before, so first I need to clear these, and then we can go to get more lineups, and we're going to take the first 20 that it gives me, and then we'll take a look at how the player exposures look, how some of the individual lineups look, and see how contrarian some of them are as well. Now, if you look at the individual player exposures, Marcus Sasser at the top at 58%. Kyle Kuzma, Sasser is going to be one of the most popular value plays today. Kyle Kuzma coming in second at 47%. Austin Reeves showing up a ton at 42%. Now, both of those guys are quality plays today, but you're talking about players that are likely to be in that 10 to 15% ownership range. Kuzma right now at 17%, Reeves at 13%. So they are showing up very highly here, in part because of selecting the contrarian lineups. Again, if I were actually doing this to choose my own lineups, I would have used all lineups and have a nice balance. But that's probably why these guys are showing up so high. Kelly Olynyk showing up 37% of the time. He is projected to be the highest owned player on the slate right now at 47% on DraftKings. Walker Kessler is doubtful for Utah, so we don't know what the starting lineup will be. They could, in theory, move John Collins to the 5 and go with Agbaji as another wing, but I think it's likely that we get Kelly Olynyk in the starting lineup. He's a 1.1 DraftKings point per minute guy this year. He's going to look very, very good at that price tag. LaMelo Ball, third highest owned guy on the slate at 47%. $8,900 price tag, extremely favorable matchup with Washington. Looks really, really good. Same goes for Gordon Hayward at 6,600. Now, Jabari Walker here at 3,200 is the type of guy that probably will look different later on in the day. He is only $3,200. The Blazers are missing Robert Williams, so there is the potential for Jabari Walker to step into more minutes, but it's also not a guarantee. You could just get more playing time from Ayton. You could get Moses Brown dusted off as the backup. So 3,200 power forward eligible. Jabari Walker is an appealing and interesting, low-owned, cheap contrarian play, since we don't know exactly what his minutes will look like. There is a chance he just plays more than I'm expecting. But right now we have him projected for about 20 minutes. He's showing up a lot. He probably will look a little bit worse as we get closer to lock, just because more value is almost guaranteed to open up. Malcolm Brogdon at 8,200. His price tags come up, but still playing on a Portland offense that doesn't really have much in the way of scoring. Naz Reid, Jay Crowder, two of the more popular value plays today. Reid coming in at 24%. Crowder coming in at 23%. Nikola Jokic, self-explanatory. Jaden McDaniels coming off of a game where he played 40 minutes in regulation. He's only 4,200. we have 20% of him. So nothing really too crazy in our player exposures. Again, Jabari Walker is the most questionable thing here. And that probably will change by lock. Also, as a reminder, if you are using this tool and you select your 20 lineups and you're looking and you're like, okay, well, I just don't want this much Jabari Walker. Click his name. You immediately get all of your Jabari Walker lineups to the top. You can delete the ones that you don't want and then go down, get more lineups and select non-Jabari Walker ones. That's how you can lower your exposures to individual players. If you're just seeing guys where it's like, okay, cool, they're a good play, but I don't need 32% Walker. Or I don't need 47% Kuzma. That's how you would do it. So now looking at some of these individual lineups and the projections and ownership, this one projects for 272 DraftKings points, 103% aggregate ownership. We have a 5% Bruce Brown, 3% D'Angelo Russell, 10% to Jaden McDaniels, PJ Washington at 18%, Nikola Jokic at 17%, Killian Hayes coming in at 25%, Kyle Kuzma at 17%, and then Jabari Walker at 7%. So again, this is a contrarian lineup. And you still have plenty of guys getting double-digit ownership. McDaniels, Washington, Jokic, Hayes, Kuzma. So, keep that in mind if you're worried about, are you playing contrarian enough? Are you playing too much chalk? Especially in the NBA, which is a more projectable sport than others. There's no reason that your whole lineup has to be contrarian. So that's kind of what I expected to see here and what I wanted to show. Similarly, 3% ownership to Kobe White, 13 to Reeves, 23 to Crowder, 24 to Reed, 6% Joel Embiid, really, really good contrarian play tonight. Tough matchup against the Celtics, but his assist percentage has skyrocketed this year. He's been fantastic, and people just aren't going to roster him. So really like that play in tournaments despite the tough matchup. Marcus Sasser at 24%, Jabari Walker again at 7%, and then Jokic at 17%. So actually managed to fit Embiid and Jokic into this lineup together. That's not something I would expect to do very often, but it does clearly have a very high ceiling. And finally, we can look at this one. Still 271 points, 98% projected ownership. So the lowest owned lineup of the ones we've looked at. Tyus Jones in a very favorable game, only 8% owned against Charlotte. Donovan Mitchell at 9,600, just purely a contrarian play where you're hoping to catch the game where Donovan Mitchell just scores a bunch of points. He's 2% owned. Kyle Anderson showing up at 12%. Crowder at 23, Jokic again at 17, Sasser at 24. Again, we have Jabari Walker, and then DeAndre Ayton, only 4% owned at 7K. A pretty interesting play. I sort of mentioned it when we talked about Jabari Walker, but Ayton on his own looks fine at 7K. There is a chance he just plays significantly more minutes without Robert Williams. It's not the most likely outcome, but certainly something that could happen. So I wanted to find our first Jabari Walker lineup just to kind of see how different that looks. And here it is, projects for 276 DraftKings points, 116% ownership. Tyrese Halliburton at 9,800, 9% owned. Great. He's only 9% owned because he is $900 more than LaMelo Ball and doesn't project quite as well as Ball given LaMelo's matchup. But we know that Halliburton still gives you a massive ceiling. Pat Connaughton, pretty interesting tournament play, only 4% owned. The Bucks are without Chris Middleton. Jay Crowder is going to be the popular value piece that people go to, but there are ways this game could play out where Connaughton just outplays Jay Crowder and steals some minutes. He's only 3,700. RJ Barrett getting 2% ownership, $6,500 small forward. Then we start getting into some more popular guys. Kyle Kuzma at 17%. Kelly Olynyk projected again to be the most popular player on the slate at 47%. Looks very good. If he were power forward eligible, he would clearly be the top play on the slate. As a center only, there is that massive opportunity cost, but still very, very cheap for a guy that can produce the way he does. Malcolm Brogdon, 13% owned, looks pretty good. Naz Reid at 4,600 looks good. And then Bismack Biyombo, another contrarian piece, $5,100 starting center for Memphis. I think typically people are going to go to Daniel Gafford in this price range. He's only $4,900. He's getting 11% ownership compared to Biyombo's 1%, but Biyombo can certainly get it done at that price point. So that's what we have for DraftKings. Now we can go back and take a look at FanDuel. And while we're loading that, as a reminder, use the link below this video, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Twitter. Use the promo code, click the link, use the promo code NBA Treat, and you get access to this tool for just $4.99 for your first week. It is perfect for you if you are a guy playing or a person playing 20 lineups or less, or playing lower stakes. The price point is more favorable. So for FanDuel, we're going to go back to all lineups just to see how those look and see, kind of get obviously different site. You're going to get different exposures anyway, but interested to see how the exposures look in terms of popular players versus not compared to what we got on DraftKings when we did contrarian only. So we're going to save the first 20 lineups here, and then we can take a look at them. We have Kelly Olynyk at the top, 90%, $4,400 power forward. So he is just a better play. He's a great play on DraftKings, better play on FanDuel, power forward the opportunity cost just doesn't really exist. He's only 4,400. Getting to 90% of him, he's projected for 60% ownership. No real issues with that. Jordan Hawkins, same thing. He's a good play on DraftKings at 4,700 or 4,900. I don't remember off the top of my head. 4,300 on FanDuel, so even cheaper. Shooting guard eligible. We're getting to 70%. He's projected for 67%. Just a completely broken price tag on Olynyk and Hawkins. Not a whole lot you can do there, especially because they're at positions that are relatively low opportunity cost. Then we get to LaMelo, 65% at 8,800. So our three highest owned guys here are actually the three highest owned guys on the slate as well. LaMelo's coming in at 50% ownership. Great matchup, very favorable price tag. The counter argument to LaMelo is simply that there are plenty of good plays in this $8,800 range. It's actually pretty unlikely that LaMelo actually ends up being the best one, but compared to any other individual player in that range, he is the favorite. So we're getting to him, getting to a bunch of Kuzma, 7,600 small forward. That looks really good. The small forward ownership's really nice, or a small forward position rather, is really nice, especially because on FanDuel you have to roster two of them. So that makes him valuable. He's projected for 14% ownership, so we're about 3x. Bruce Brown at 5,200. We're getting 40%. He's projected for 18, so we're around 2x there. Jordan Poole, only 6,700 in what should be a very high scoring game between Washington and Charlotte. We're getting to 35% of him. More favorable price tag than we have on DraftKings, but he's still not getting that much ownership, which is actually pretty appealing. He's only projected for 9% ownership. Sticking with that Charlotte-Washington game, we're getting to PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward. They both look good. Brogdon and Sharp look good from Portland, who is missing pretty much everybody. Obi Toppin, we saw 27 minutes in 3 quarters last game. No idea really still how the playing time is going to break down for him, but that was good to see. He is still only $4,100. It is a relatively weak position, so that makes some sense. Marcus Sasser at 5,300. Now, he's a fine play on FanDuel. He actually looks like a better play on DraftKings. Most of the guys we've talked about so far have looked better on FanDuel. Now, looking at the individual lineups, the first one showing up, 329 projected points, 201% aggregate ownership. So when you compare it to these other lineups, it's kind of middle of the pack in ownership, and it grades out pretty well in terms of projected points. So it looks like a good lineup, even compared to the other, all of these are quality lineups, but even compared to these lineups, to the other quality lineups we have, this one looks pretty good. Tyrese Halliburton coming in at 10% owned, LaMelo at 50, two really high upside point guards. Jordan Poole, relatively high upside shooting guard in this spot at 6,700, only 9% owned. Benedict Mathurin, 4,900, only 4% owned. This Indiana game is likely to be high scoring as well. We didn't see a lot of these guys show up on DraftKings because they're pretty expensive, but a $4,900 price tag on Mathurin is certainly interesting to take a shot at 4% owned in tournaments. Getting to Jeremy Grant, small forward eligibility is nice, 17% owned. Jay Crowder, better play on DraftKings, where he's only 3,700 and we don't, or 3,900 rather, and we don't have as much value as we do on FanDuel. But as a result, he's only 8% owned here. So you can use him as a contrarian play on FanDuel, whereas on DraftKings, he's just a chalk value building block, basically. PJ Washington, Kelly Olynyk, and Bam Adebayo to round it out. Adebayo only 8K on FanDuel, 10% owned. So really solid lineup there. A lot of good players, a lot of good plays. A few guys that are really popular with Washington, Olynyk, and LaMelo. But other than that, nobody that's like really popular in that lineup. Next, we have a little bit more contrarian lineup that projects a little bit worse. 323 fantasy points, 192% ownership. James Harden at 8,100. The Clippers are essentially, I think, unplayable on DraftKings. On FanDuel, still don't like them, but 3% owned, 8,100. You're still just going to get games where James Harden has a big game or Paul George has a big game. It's the problem is that you're not going to be able to figure out when that is prior, and you're kind of just hoping for the best. On a 14-game slate, that's not really my favorite approach, but at 8,100 and no ownership, Harden does at least have some appeal in a lineup here or there. Darius Garland, also 2% owned. We know he has a nice ceiling. Hayward, Hawkins, two popular plays. Kuzma, Brown, Olynyk, all popular. Obi Toppin, contrarian power forward play at 4,100. I like that. And then Joel Embiid, nearly $12,000, 2% owned. It is tough to pay for him at center on FanDuel where you can only roster one center. But as a result, people aren't going to do it. And Joel Embiid is capable of just putting up a score that no matter what his salary is, you need it. We just saw it last game. He probably would have gone for 100 if he had needed to play the fourth quarter. Now, obviously, he's playing the Celtics tonight and not the Wizards, so you cannot expect anything close to what he did. But he's been arguably the best point per minute fantasy producer so far this year. It's pretty much neck and neck between him and Jokic, I believe. So getting him at 2% owned is fine if you can do it. And when you look at this lineup, we didn't really do too much in the way of value that we really hate. Jordan Hawkins is clearly a great point per dollar value play. Bruce Brown at 5,200 is fine. Olynyk's a great play. Projects extremely well, at least. And then Obi Toppin, yeah, it's risky, but it's not difficult to imagine how Obi Toppin pays off a $4,100 price tag. So getting to Embiid here looks pretty good. So that's all I have for you today. Obviously, keep in mind that this stuff is going to change as we get news, but you can use this tool for yourself. Just click the link below, use the promo code NBA Treat, $4.99 for your first week. Other than that, thank you for checking out the video, and good luck on your lineups tonight.